Have you ever picked up the Hebrew Bible, read it, and then looked at modern Judaism or Christianity and thought, wait a minute, these feel really different? It's a fascinating puzzle, right? Well, what if the answer isn't that the religions changed, but that the human mind itself was changing as the Bible was being written? I mean, this is the central question. You read the Bible, and certain things we think of as absolutely core, like a detailed vision of the afterlife, are barely there. And yet, entire theologies have been built on them later. So, what happened? What changed? The answer might not be some new, grand revelation, but something much more fundamental. An evolution in the very minds of the people writing and reading the text. To help us unpack all of this, we're turning to Rabbi James Cohn's incredible book, The Minds of the Bible. He pulls from neuroscience, philosophy, you name it, to float this really radical idea. The Bible isn't just a static holy book, it's a living record of our own intellectual and spiritual transformation. It's not just about what was written down, but about the changing nature of the human brain itself.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll dive into what Cohn calls the dawn of introspection, this new inner life. Then, we'll look at how language, of all things, started building new realities. After that, we'll get into the two massive revolutions that changed the game forever. And we'll wrap it all up by looking at the Bible as a conversation that's, well, still happening today.
All right, first stop, introspection. The big idea here from Cohn is that the huge shift we see in the Bible, it didn't start with a new law or some big battle. Nope. It started inside the human mind, with this brand new ability for us to look inward and reflect on ourselves. So what do we really mean by introspection? It's simply our ability to look inside ourselves, to really examine our own thoughts, our feelings, our motives. You know, it's the difference between just feeling angry and taking a step back to ask, hold on, why am I so angry right now? That capacity, that simple question, wasn't always a given. It was a development. And this is where it all clicks. Cohn is suggesting that the biblical authors weren't just, taking dictation from the divine. They were real people, actively wrestling with their own complicated inner worlds. And you can almost feel this happening in the text itself. You go from these big, external, collective commands in a book like Exodus to the raw, personal, internal agony of Job, who is demanding to know why he's suffering. That internal struggle, that's the engine of change. Okay, so you've got this new, complex inner world bubbling up, but how do you even begin to describe it? Well, you need new tools. You need a new kind of language. And this brings us to the incredible power of metaphor and that huge leap from the spoken word to the written one. Let's take a line we all know from Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd." It's beautiful, right? Classic poetry. But what if it's way more than that? Cohn makes the case that language like this isn't just describing something. It's a powerful tool for thinking that literally shapes how we understand the world. See, this is the profound insight. Metaphor isn't just fancy window dressing. For the biblical authors, it was how you grabbed onto an idea that was just ungraspable. How in the world do you talk about God? Well, you build a bridge in your mind. You compare the divine to something you do know, a shepherd, a king, a rock, a fortress. And in doing that, you aren't just describing God. You are actively shaping the very concept of God in your head. Now, this new consciousness got a massive upgrade with the shift from an oral culture to a written one. Think about it. In a purely oral world, God's message is often a direct voice. But the second you write that down, everything changes. The story becomes fixed, standardized. And suddenly, you're not just listening, you're poring over a text, debating the exact meaning of every single word. This just blew the doors wide open for interpretation on a scale nobody had ever seen before. And this whole new world of wrestling with a written text, it leads directly to two of the biggest revolutions in human thought, the development of the Talmud in Judaism and the New Testament in Christianity. Cohn calls these the twin revolutions, and it's a perfect name for it. Both grew out of the exact same soil, the Hebrew Bible, but they branched off in these completely new radical directions. I mean, think about it. The Talmud is the ultimate expression of this new interpretive mindset. It takes the text and builds this incredible universe of legal debate and ethical arguments around it. It's a way for Judaism to adapt and survive within the text itself, especially after the temple was gone. And the New Testament? It takes that introspective turn and runs with it, shifting the focus inward to individual faith and a personal salvation, rather than a collective national covenant. They were both revolutionary adaptations, and both were only possible because of this new way of thinking about an ancient text. So after all that, Where does this leave us? We followed this incredible path from the quiet of the inner mind to the power of language and all the way to entirely new religious worlds. And that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, the Bible's legacy as a conversation that's still not over.
Really, what Cohn gives us is a whole new lens for looking at the Bible. It stops being this static rulebook and becomes a dynamic record of our own minds evolving. He shows us how everything, from the metaphors we use to our growing self-awareness, shapes the scripture. And that's a challenge to all of us, to see the Bible not as the end of a conversation, but as an invitation to keep talking.
And this brings us full circle, right back to that first question we asked. Why do modern religions feel so different from what's in the text? Because the Bible itself was never a single, static thing. It's the transcript of a living, breathing, sometimes messy dialogue between human beings, their evolving consciousness, and their attempt to understand the divine. The Talmud and the New Testament didn't erase the Bible. They were just the next chapter in the conversation. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Maybe the real lasting power of the Bible isn't in the answers it gives us. Maybe its greatest contribution is in the enduring, powerful questions it forces us to keep asking about who we are, what this world is, and what our place in it might be. It seems pretty clear that conversation is far from over.